Hello everyone, welcome back to Just Learn Korean. Today I'll be explaining Korean pronouns. In fact, some Korean pronouns are not really used in everyday conversation. Then, what's the alternatives? Let's find out. Just like English, there are mainly three types of pronouns: subject pronouns, object pronouns, and possessive pronouns. Today we are looking at the subject pronouns. As a casual version, 나, 내, 너, 그, 그녀, 우리, 너희, 그들. You can use them when you speak to or speak about someone who you know well and is usually younger than you or similar age as you. And as a polite version, 저, 제, 당신, 저희, 여러분, 그분들. You should use them when you speak to or speak about anyone who you need to polite to, regardless of a relationship or age gap between you and the person. You should mention 나, 내, 저, 제 when you need to clarify that you are talking about yourself, such as when you introduce yourself or when you start a conversation or a new topic. For example, 나는 17살이야. 내가 17살이야. 저는 17살이에요. 제가 17살이에요. 나는 여행 좋아해. 내가 여행 좋아해. 저는 여행 좋아해요. 제가 여행 좋아해요. But you don't need to mention 나, 내, 저, 제 when the listener knows that you are talking about yourself. For example, when someone asks, "What do you like?" you can simply say, 여행 좋아해. 여행 좋아해요. Or if someone asks, "How old are you?" then you can just say, 17살이야. 17살이에요. 너, 당신 are the words that you should be very careful with. 너는 여행 좋아해? 당신은 여행 좋아하세요? 너 should be used only to someone who is very, very close to you and also younger than you or similar age as you. Friends, for example. 당신 is mainly used in three ways: between husband and wife, or you call a stranger when you fight with that person, or occasionally used in writing because, ironically, it sounds poetic. That's why it's often used in poems. Then, what's the alternatives? You should use family names, social status, or names instead. For example, 엄마는 여행 좋아하세요? 선생님은 여행 좋아하세요? 루나 씨는 여행 좋아하세요? But you can drop a subject when the listener knows that you are talking to the listener. You can simply say, 여행 좋아해? 여행 좋아하세요? 그, 그녀 are also the words that you should be careful with. 그는 키가 커. 그녀는 키가 커. 그는 키가 크세요. 그녀는 키가 크세요. But 그녀 sound poetic. That's why they are used in poems, novels, and songs. Then what's the alternatives? In general conversation, you should use family names, social status, or names instead. For example, 아빠는 키가 커. 아빠는 키가 크세요. 엄마는 키가 커. 엄마는 키가 크세요. 선생님은 키가 커. 선생님은 키가 크세요. 피터 씨는 키가 커. 피터 씨는 키가 크세요. 메리 씨는 키가 커. 메리 씨는 키가 크세요. Or you don't need to even mention when the listener knows who you are talking about. For example, when someone asks, how does Peter or Mary look like? You can simply say, 키가 커. 키가 크세요. 우리, 저희 are similar to 나, 내, 저, 제. You should mention 우리 or 저희 when you need to clarify that you are talking about yourselves, such as when you introduce yourselves or when you start a conversation or a new topic. For example, 우리는 밥 먹고 있어. 저희는 밥 먹고 있어요. 우리는 영화 보러 가. 저희는 영화 보러 가요. But you don't need to mention 우리, 저희 when the listener knows that you are talking about yourselves. For example, when someone asks, what are you guys doing today? You can simply say, 영화 보러 가. 영화 보러 가요. Or if someone asks, what are you guys doing now? Then you can just say, 밥 먹고 있어. 밥 먹고 있어요. 너희, 여러분 are also the words that you should be careful with. 너희는 여행 좋아해? 여러분은 여행 좋아하세요? 너희 should be used only to someone who is close to you and younger than you or similar age as you. For example, friends. 여러분 is used when the listeners are audiences, such as in a class, in a big meeting, or a concert. Then, what can you use in general conversation? Yes, you're right. You should use family names, social status, or names instead. For example, 삼촌들은 여행 좋아하세요? 선생님들은 여행 좋아하세요? 루나 씨, 피터 씨는 여행 좋아하세요? But you can drop the subject when the listeners know that you are talking to them. You can just say, 여행 좋아해? 여행 좋아하세요? 그들, 그분들 are also the words that you should be careful with. 그들은 멋있어. 그분들은 멋있어요. But 그들 sounds poetic. That's why it's used in poems, novels, and songs. And 그분들 is used usually to indicate people who you don't know in a polite way. For example, strangers in a restaurant. Then, what's the alternatives? In general conversation, you should use social status or names instead. For example, 내 친구들은 멋있어. 제 친구들은 멋있어요. BTS는 멋있어. BTS는 멋있어요. Or you don't need to mention when the listener knows who you are talking about. For example, when someone asks, what do you think of BTS? You can simply say, 멋있어. 멋있어요. 도와드릴까요? 피터는 음악 좋아해. 메리는 내 친구야. 엄마 어디 가세요? 친절해. Don't forget to check more quiz questions and click the like button. Join me again soon. Bye for now.